What's up, guys? I'm BTC. A new patch just dropped on the live version of the game. We got the brand new Map Busan, as well as some buffs, nerfs, and more. The biggest part of the patch is the brand new control map, Busan. This is a South Korean map. The three sections are Sanctuary, Downtown, and the Mecha Base. I spent a good amount of time in the PTR on this map, and it seems like it's really quite well balanced. There was some issues with some of the med pack placements, but for the most part, I think the maps seem to be quite well balanced, and they should be a lot of fun. Now, one thing I want to point out is that there's a lot of variety in these three maps. Normally when you play on Nepal or Oasis or whatever, all three of the maps, they're different, but they all use the same kind of assets and stuff, right? Like, it's the same background, it's the same setting, all that sort of deal. But with Busan, these three maps are wildly, completely different from each other. And that's really nice because you're essentially getting to play what feels like different maps all within the same control map. Now, I'm not going to go through too much on the map because I already did a complete walkthrough of the map showing where all the med packs are, the flanking routes, the best ways to approach the different capture points and all that sort of stuff. So if you want to check that out, there'll be a link for it down below. One last thing about the Busan map, it will not be in competitive play for 2 weeks. Let's move on to the hero balance changes because there was some pretty decently sized buffs and nerfs in this patch. So the first thing is more of a general, and they added visual outlines to make allies visible through walls. So this is basically a buff for everyone, all at the same time. Now, support players have always had this, where they can see their teammates through the wall so they know who to heal and all that sort of stuff, but if you were playing a tank or you're playing a DPS, then you just didn't get this, and I really like that they added this, because I think this is going to help teams coordinate a lot better. Now, the really top-end, higher skill players probably wouldn't have needed this, but I still think it's going to be nice, but I think this is really going to benefit the most the average player on the competitive ladder. Just being able to see where the rest of your team is going to be really powerful, and I'm really glad that they actually added this to the game. The first balance change is going to end up being what I think is a pretty significant buff to the damage of quite a few characters. So let me read it. It says, fixed a bug that would cause some weapons that fired multiple shots at once to inconsistently deal critical damage. The example is Doomfist, D.Va, Genji, Reaper, Torbjorn. Developer comments say, while this is a bug fix, we wanted to highlight this change as it can affect gameplay by changing the damage output of the affected heroes in certain situations. After this fix, weapons with spread should now correctly calculate critical damage for each individual pellet that lands in a critical region. The end result of this change is that it should be significantly easier to deal critical damage with any weapon that fires multiple shots simultaneously, such as Reaper's Hellfire Shotguns, D.Va's Funic Cannons. In addition, we've changed the logic for when these weapons display a critical marker on your screen. It now requires 30% of your shots to be critical rather than displaying it if a single pellet hits critically. That's actually kind of nice because oftentimes you play Reaper, you hit someone from halfway across the map and it's like, oh, critical! Yeah, you only hit them with one pellet though and it did like 3 damage, but whatever. Anyways, the main bulk of this is that those characters like Reaper, like Torbjorn, like Doomfist, D.Va, Roadhog, all of those types of characters are now going to be landing critical hits more often. And a critical hit is double damage. Now, it doesn't mean that their total damage is going to simply double, because that's just not the case, because not every single part of that multi-hit attack is going to land critically. But this does mean that overall, all of those types of characters will see a damage increase. And that's pretty significant. And I actually was talking about this in a previous video about how they're going to probably end up adding more anti-tank stuff into the game, because as it is right now, triple tank dive and the goats, the 3 tank, 3 support, is both of those are really strong comps right now. So the fact that they're adding stuff into the game, even though this is technically labeled as a bug fix, the fact that they're adding more stuff into the game that will allow you to deal more damage with these anti-tank type stuff is definitely kind of telling. And, you know, I mentioned it before. Someone asked what kind of character do I think is going to be next released, and my thought was, you know, it's probably going to be an anti-tank DPS. I wouldn't be surprised. Moving on, Ana got a slight change to the precision when she zoomed in. This is kind of a buff, sort of. Basically, you're just going to have better control. Like, you still have to aim, and you still have to hit the target you're trying to, but you have better control when you're zoomed in. That's pretty much it. Next up is Brigitte. This is kind of a buff and a nerf at the same time, although I would lean more towards the side of nerf than anything. So, Shield Bash now knocks down and gets knocked down by other charging targets, Reinhardt and Doomfist. Developer comments, currently when two charging targets hit each other, they both fall down and are briefly stunned. You can see this interaction with Doomfist's Rocket Punch and Reinhardt's charge abilities. Brigitte's Shield Bash previously wasn't included in this group, which meant that if she used Shield Bash against these other abilities, she would generally stun them and not be affected herself. That's actually not true, I'll go into that in a second. This change makes it so that if she uses Shield Bash against Charge or Rocket Punch, both players will be knocked down. Okay, so they have these wrong. That's incorrect information in those comments right there. Shield Bash against Reinhardt's Charge would always win. Shield Bash against Doomfist's Rocket Punch would always lose. So this is where it's kind of a buff, kind of a nerf. Against Doomfist, this is a buff, because now it means that you can actually cancel out his Rocket Punch. Against Reinhardt, this is a nerf, because now he can cancel out your Shield Bash. The thing I don't like about this, though, is if you hit someone with a Shield Bash from the side or from behind, it still acts as if you hit each other head on. And it doesn't really make sense. I don't know if they could quite code that, where you can hit someone from the side and it would actually stun them and not have the same impact as if you would both kind of like charged into each other. But net result is this. It's kind of a nerf more than anything because there's a lot more Reinhardt players, and because being able to interrupt that charge was way easier than Doomfist's Rocket Punch. So mostly this is going to be a nerf for Brigitte, but in fairness, it probably should have always behaved this way to begin with. And speaking of Reinhardt, he's next. They had to rebuild his Earthshatter ultimate. Now, in-game, it still has the same cooldown, all that other stuff. They did change the animation for it, but what I'm talking about is they had to redo the code for the ability because it was just so buggy and so broken. They essentially just started from scratch, is what my understanding of it is. So it will now consistently hit enemies near walls, no longer hits enemies that enter the damage cone after the wave has passed, no longer damages enemies behind barriers, and it should travel up inclines and around the payload appropriately now. And they said that we've given Earthshatter a complete overhaul to combat inconsistencies with its performance. These changes will make Earthshatter's behavior more predictable and effective. Okay, that's all fine and good. I still like the old animation better. Or better yet, they should have combined the old one with the new one. I think that would have been the best, but whatever. The basic thing is that the Earthshatter should work a lot more often when it's supposed to work. As far as the amount of damage and the stun time and all that other stuff, that remains completely unchanged. Technically, you can call this a buff because it's now actually going to work more often when it's supposed to. Next up is Widowmaker. Grappling Hook now retains momentum when used on environments or structures without a ledge. You can basically use it to slingshot yourself forward a little bit further than you could before, so it's better for movement. Widow Kiss, which is the same thing that happened with Ana, they basically increase the precision for when you're zoomed in, so it just makes it easier for you to control where you're aiming. The next one is Roadhog. They have these listed under bug fixes, but they're still basically a buff and a nerf. So for the buff, or I guess the fix, they made it so that Roadhog's hook will no longer break after hitting an enemy if you're maintaining line of sight. If you don't know what I'm talking about, there's a bug where you could hit someone with the hook, they would be in perfect line of sight right in front of you, and for no apparent reason whatsoever, the hook would break. It was unbelievably frustrating, but it seems like they fixed that. And as for the nerf, they prevented a Roadhog bug that alternate fire from calculating fall-off damage correctly. This means that if you're using your right-click at far distances, you're going to do a pretty decent amount of damage less than you were before. This is actually kind of interesting because combined with the other change they made, where I said they were buffing up the amount of damage you could get for your Reaper and Roadhog type attacks where it has the big spread. So you're actually going to deal less normal damage, but because of that other change, you can now do more critical damage. So if you're just attacking a shield like Reinhardt or Orisa or whatever, then overall your damage is going to go down at longer ranges. But if you're attacking the actual Reinhardt or Orisa or whoever themselves, your damage should go up. So it's kind of an interesting change. But that is effectively a nerf on his long-range damage. The next one is a map change, and I think they're doing this just as kind of a test to see if they can get this to fix the issue that's been happening without having to fully rework the map. So this is the Rialto map, and what they did is they changed the payload travel speed. That's been increased slightly, and also they reduced the amount of time that the payload will pause at the checkpoints. So this is an attempt to balance out the win-loss for the attacker-defender. Most of the maps in the game have a 50-50 win-loss on that. Usually it's like 49-51 or 48-52 or something. It's generally pretty close to the 50-50 mark. Rialto, not even close. It's 42 for the attackers and 58 for the defenders. So that is way out of skew for what they want for the wins-losses. So they're increasing the travel speed of the payload and also reducing that little pause thing. I don't know if this is actually going to fix it. If it does, great, but I think they're probably going to have to end up going back and changing the map itself in order to make it so that it's not, you know, that out of whack on top of the win-loss type stuff. So they're probably going to have to do something, maybe add another flanking route or whatever. I don't think they're going to have to do something as drastic as what they did with the Horizon Lunar Colony, but, you know, they're probably going to have to make some actual map changes. But this right here, I think they're just kind of testing it to see what's going on. That's everything that was changed in the game today. Again, if you want to see that Busan map walkthrough, the link for that will be down below. I think the biggest winners are probably going to be Reaper and D.Va because of that damage increase where they can now land more critical hits. D.Va's already has a very high pick rate and a pretty strong character, so giving her yet more damage is definitely going to be very strong. As for Reaper, I don't know how much this is going to impact his pick rate, but for people that are using him, they're definitely going to see that little bit of a damage boost, which should be pretty good for those anti-tank lineups. What do you guys think about these changes? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching, and if you'd like to see more, subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss anything. Also, come hang out in my Discord server and my Twitch live stream. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters. If you'd like to see what kind of cool VIP rewards you can get, check the links down below. And remember, always blame the controller because it's never your fault.